So we were connected through the wonderful Stacey Jones, who no one ever has a mean word to say about. And I take it that the era of life when you two met was when he was in Letters to Cleo?
Yes. That was probably, I believe, in Our Lady Peace, our first American tour was the Sponge Letters to Cleo tour in 1995. And that's when I met them. And got to spend that whole summer together and have just a great time, and really started a great friendship that's been going on now for, a couple decades. Pretty great.
Are you friends in general with a lot of drummers, or once you left Our Lady Peace, you kind of put a divide up between the music life and the modern life?
Well, I mean, yeah, when I left OLP, I still, although I do have 3 kids and I've been really busy with my family, I'd say I took a little bit of a break, but I'm still a drummer and I'll always be a drummer. And, the next gig will be there at some point. I'm getting, more serious about that side of my life again. And it's been really amazing to see all my kids grow up. And I have 3 now, 2 boys and a girl at 14, 13, and 10. So it's great to kind of, see them grow, and it's kind of time to get a little bit more active again for me in the music business. So it's been cool. And I did keep in touch with all my friends. I have tons of friends that are drummers, tons of them that are in the music business. A lot of my favorite drummers are also my friends as well. So I've been that kind of person ever since I started drumming as a kid, was just trying to, pick the brain of something that you see in another drummer that, that interests you.
Yeah, to throw a compliment your way, Our Lady Peace, whether or not Americans realize it, is just like a ginormous arena band in Canada. And some parts of Europe, you guys are like total headliners. And then you're like the biggest club band in history when it comes to like playing the States. It's like when you see Our Lady Peace live in New York, you're like, every one of these songs was a #1 hit somewhere in the world. And these 500 people are ecstatic. And then elsewhere in the world, it's an arena. Well, what I'm getting at is a lot of people would just coast the rest of their life of, hey, I was the drummer in a huge band. But in your case, multi-time author, doing great as a podcaster. So you've reinvented yourself so that I'm sure a lot of the people listening to the podcast didn't know that you were the drummer in a big band.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, well, I'm sure people that listen to the podcast in Canada know that. Probably everybody that does. But if they didn't, they might not know, because I'm not really that type of person with people to, give you the bio, 5 minutes into meeting somebody. I'm more kind of just, hang out and chatting and seeing what's going on. So the last person that you're going to hear that I was the drummer in Our Lady Peace is me.
Well, Stacey, unfortunately, cleared the air on that one. So you guys, in your time, in your, decade plus with the band, or is it like 15? How many years was it? It was like 94 to 2014?
21 years I was in the
21.
band.
Geez.
Yeah.
Well,
93 to 20, do the math, 2016, 2014. It was my last gig was New Year's Eve in Vancouver on 2013 to 2014. So
went out with a bang. But towards the beginning of that run, you did 30 plus dates opening up for Van Halen. And that was before Our Lady Peace really had a foothold in the States. Yeah, you were played on Much Music USA, but that was kind of like a deep cut cable channel. So was it like management or your booking agent got you onto that tour, or was somebody in the band a fan?
I believe that summer we did some shows with Plant and Page, and that was a kind of our introduction to arenas in a period, just playing in a big place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure it was their manager at the time was Ray Daniels,
Mm-hmm.
and manages Rush, and I think that was probably the primary reason that we got it. And also that we were, Starseed was doing really well on the radio. It was a top 5 rock track and alternative track. So it makes sense to have them, pick a rock band that's doing well as an opener. I believe Alice in Chains was on that tour before us, and you know, it was just, if you go down the list of bands who were opening for bands at that time, it was pretty good chance you're going to nail somebody who did something.
And you guys, it looked like were on all or most of the shows alongside Skid Row, or is that an internet error?
There's a few shows with Skid Row, not many, only a handful, but yes.
Internet fake news, got it. So you have this tour, and was Van Halen like one of the reasons you started playing music, or is it just like, oh, cool, I like them, I like a couple of songs?
Well, I mean, as a drummer, I always appreciated Alex and Eddie, you know, just as musicians. So it was, but as an alternative band in 1995, trying to get, you know, how hard it was to be, if you're considered alternative, to stay in that, you know, the alternative. So us being a band from Canada, we thought that maybe it wasn't the best idea to do that tour, because we were starting to do, you know, K-Rock was playing us in LA and 99X in Atlanta, and we had those things in place to kind of, you know, maybe go in that direction of the alternative world, which was massive and lots of tours. And we just the Van Halen Balance tour was so big, and it was going through all the Midwest. It was we just realized that first and foremost, it was a long time for us to grow as a live act, give us a chance to play in front of nobody who cares. So at least if you can get good and maybe get people into it, that's not a bad idea. And it ended up, in hindsight, being a great thing in terms of longevity for the band, because if they liked us, they came back. And a lot of people in the Midwest, even to the last years that I was with the band, would say, hey, I saw you on that Van Halen tour, and would continue to come ever since. So if you have an opportunity as a band to play in front of a lot of people in a short amount of time,
yeah,
no matter what. I mean, we weren't getting a Pearl Jam offer, and we weren't, you know, it's not like we had the options. This is what we had, and we had to go for it.
And of course, retrospect is 2020, and now, you know, at this point, you know, having been around the world a bunch of times, like what the troubling signs are in a band. What I'm hearing from people who toured with Van Halen is either you saw them all day, every day, they knocked on your door, they just walked in, or yeah, occasionally in the hallway we'd see them. They didn't hang out much. Now, based on the story that Stacy told me, it sounds like you were around the Van Halen guys a lot.
I had a nickname with the guys. They called me. I was only 20 years old, freshly 20 years old. My father was a jazz drummer. So I hit it off with Alex day one, talking about drums. And he really just took me under his wing. And both of them were dealing in sobriety at the time. So they were rehearsing and practicing at 2:00 in the afternoon on stage just to keep their mind off of, you know, the road and the problems that can happen with the road. So I think and I was a straight kid that didn't do anything drug wise or even drink coffee. So I think he appreciated that as well, that I was just an eager student of the drums that wanted to get as good as I possibly can. And to be honest, we shared the same heroes. I mean, drummers that I loved, he loved, like Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa, and even his guys at that time, like Vinnie Colaiuta and Jeff Porcaro. Like Alex knew all those guys, and we just loved talking about music. And I started doing, he had if you remember that tour, he had the neck brace.
Yes.
And that was all to do with the damage he had done drinking and on his body, I guess, just realizing that now these injuries are here. And he had a neck problem and some vertebrae issues. So, and he was drinking garlic juice every single day for his body. And so he had this horrifying garlic breath, and he apologizing for it. I was like, don't worry, man. And he had his tech giving him, you know, with this awesome fruit display, and just it was for me, it was just incredible. I literally watched him play every single night from behind the drums, and just sat there and learned. And Eddie, obviously, I got to know him more, and just really musician, like the most musician type people you could ever want. If you like chatting it up and talking about music, those guys you'll always appreciate it. And I could see there was definite animosity. I think Sammy and them were not really talking at the time. There was a divide there. Sammy even had like his 10, 20 minute set of his own tunes. Like you could tell like the end was near. So I think that was another way that I probably got in more with Eddie and Alex, was because they were just kind of avoiding Sammy too, you know. And obviously Michael Anthony's sweetheart. Everybody that ever met him would only say the same thing. He had his awesome little tiki hut bar with the hot peppers everywhere at offside stage, and was always telling people to come over and hang out. So what a time for me to grow up and to see those guys, and just not them to be so helpful. And it was we didn't get to do the last few shows because something happened, injury or something, so we didn't get to have a proper farewell. But that was I'll never forget it. It was the best time of my life that summer.
That is so great to hear, because given how mum and quiet Alex Van Halen has always been to the press and to social media, etc., when you talk to people who toured with them, you hear like, oh yeah, he was a great guy. Yeah, he hung out all the time. Yet as somebody who never made statements, it's almost like he never wanted to squash all the rumors. Yet Sammy, he'll talk to anybody at any time, and let out all the venom about Alex. That's my interpretation.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's Alex. He's one of those guys. I haven't even talked to him in over a decade at least, and I'm sure it would be great if I saw him tomorrow. I give him a big hug and tell him that how much he means to me and how much I respect him. And they're private guys. Both of them are very private people, and you can understand that. I mean, look at any one of my heroes, people like Sandy Koufax. I love baseball, and Sandy Koufax with the Salinger-esque escape that he did after leaving baseball on his own terms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, type of personality that they don't care about the things outside of it. And Alex and Eddie were very that kind of a person. It was about artistry. It was about trying to master their craft, and everything comes with it. And sure, they got into things and had fun, and maybe a little bit too much fun. The most important thing was their work ethic was always undying.
And Stacy told the story about Alex accidentally lighting himself on fire. Something about, not to incriminate him, but Alex's drum tech ripping a bong hit and not noticing that Alex had lit himself on fire during the gong part. And you got to ask Jeremy if this is true, though.
Well, I think the story, the actual story was he was doing a solo where he had like flaming mallets.
Okay.
The tech, I guess some stuff caught on fire, and I don't know if it was Alex's hair or what on Alex, but Alex actually caught fire, and the tech was looking at him, and he's like, takes a huge rip because he goes and puts his thumb up. Looks fucking great, man. Instead of grabbing the fire extinguisher, he just was like, yeah, man, right on.
Wow.
So that could have stopped it right away, but he just was like, oh wow, this is part of the show, man, and clearly baked out of his mind. Unbelievable. Yeah, that's a great story.
And Alex finished the show after lighting himself on fire?
That wasn't on the Balance tour, obviously. That was like in the old days, crazy days of early Van Halen.
Oh.
That would not have happened on the Balance tour.
So it was a sober tour, I take it.
Yeah, definitely sober tour. Yeah, I'm sure that probably happened when things were really going in 85 or 4, probably around there.
Got it. So having done that touring and no longer having to, go, I'm alternative, because let's face it, the alternative thing, it was dead by 98. You kind of didn't want to be alternative. Now you kind of do want to again. So there's no shame in loving classic rock or stadium rock or anything like that. Have you gone back over the years and gotten more into the Van Halen catalog and loved the Dave years more?
Well, I became a fan on that tour, just seeing them play every day. I mean, they used to do Hot for Teacher because I guess they didn't want to do it with Sammy, or Sammy didn't want to do it, but they would play it just Alex and Eddie, and it was like shred unbelievable. So like they would just jam all the time, and those jams that they would have on stage were epic because they were really going for it and in just trying to keep it together in sobriety, right? So I mean, when they were jamming like that, that's as, you know, when you see those great live shows of jazz artists, or, you know, musicians that are it's all about improvisation and feel, and, you know, when they're playing the songs live, they're playing the songs and it's fantastic, but when they were doing these jams, they were trying to just push each other and go crazy. And I mean, that's when I saw, like, I had no idea how good he was as a double bass drummer. Like, I knew Alex was great with the Hot for Teacher and stuff. I realized how much musicality he had, and I'd never heard double bass. He would just jump on him and be like, like syncopated stuff in fills and go back to the beat and then just go like,
Yeah.
just it's like, whoa, man, that's usually she's like that's it, the double bass drums, right? He was just like throwing it in like extra set of hands, like, yeah, man. He's and they were just going off together at the time, and I'm sure they grew up doing that. That's probably their happy place.
Well said. Something else I find is great drummers, and I'm calling you a great drummer. You didn't call yourself that, for the record. I called you a great drummer. I find 1 in 3 great drummers who played rock or hard rock somehow have some connection to Greg Bissonette. Do you?
I've been to a couple clinics.
Okay.
I think class. Yeah. Hell yeah. Bissonette. Yeah, fantastic. When he played with Maynard Ferguson in the early days, like a jazz guy, man. For sure. Love Greg Bissonette.
Got it. Where I was going with that is musicians often will talk about, if they know the Roth catalog, they'll say that the Eat 'em and Smile Band, which was Bissonette, Billy Sheehan, and Steve Vai, is the greatest backing band ever. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I mean, it's fantastic band too, right? And it's a completely different thing. It's just they're not even comparable because they're so different. The musicianship is they're all kind of different players, and fantastic on similar levels. So a lot of things happened in the 80s that people didn't realize, like musicians that were put together and didn't, to this day, don't know that, you know, Steve Lukather played on Beat It, or, you know, all these, the mishmashes of that soft rock from the 70s actually being so involved with, you know, the hard rock in the 80s, and the songwriters and the lyric writers. And just, it's collaboration, man. It's all it is. And you can't compare it. And there's no better or worse when it comes to that stuff.
Another thing that super intrigues me is the number of Canadian artists who are 20 times platinum, 30 times platinum in Canada, and then didn't get a fair shake in this country. Yet the music is totally universal. If you talk about Trooper, you know, for example.
Sure. Yeah.
No Americans know who Trooper is, or Street Hard, or that kind of stuff.
Chilliwack.
Yeah, Chilliwack. Yeah. He co-wrote a lot of stuff for people. What was his name? Russ. He was a David Foster guy, I think.
Who are you talking about before I said I mentioned Chilliwack and you said Russ who?
Oh, I thought there was a guy in Chilliwack named Russ something or other who co-wrote a lot of people. Like, I know he co-wrote on that Contraband album, and I think he went like a David Foster thing.
Got it. Like when David Foster was doing the Chicago stuff, I think he was rocking some Chilliwack maybe too in the production studio. That vibes. Like gone so long. That's that one.
Yes, exactly. So what I was getting at is there like a Canadian Van Halen adjacent kind of band that we should be getting up on? That, because I have to ask you, as the guy who wrote a book called Canadianity,
Canadianity. Yeah.
Canadianity. Okay.
Yeah, there's lots of great rock bands up here. I mean, Monster Truck is a great Canadian rock band
Oh
now.
yeah.
But that's the thing. Usually, like Danko Jones is a classic Canadian rocker he's big in Northern Europe. But Harem Scarum, you remember them?
Harry from Harem Scarum. Yeah, sure.
They were a big Canadian rock band that actually still, I believe, have a following in Asia. But and Voivod is as Quebec's kind of best rock export. And you probably saw the Anvil doc.
Oh yeah.
Anvil still at that, still trying to get that thing happening. Still, man, it's just classic.
Well, is there one that you think of as like the classic rock kind of band though, that is kind of like the Van Halen,
Well,
like Good Times kind of band?
Triumph, obviously Rush is like Rush is Rush, which is like a whole different thing, right? So, yeah, and there's like some crazy. There was a Uzeb. There's a crazy Quebec like prog rock band.
Them, I don't know. I thought you were going to say Kick Axe was the Canadian Van Halen.
Well, then there's like good like Sons of Freedom were a great band from Vancouver. They were a little more alternative rock, but still crushing. But yeah, man, they're out there. There's a lot of great just music bands, period, in this country, and the fact that Canada does a lot of grants to artists and spends a lot of money to grow the music community. There's a lot of bands in every kind of genre that you can think of that is incredible up here. And obviously the hip hop scene in Toronto is kind of the biggest thing, I guess, that's happening in Canada right now in terms of how massive it is. And it's just kind of starting. But it's a great country for music. And I think the fact that we push and give into it, and we you have to play a certain amount of Canadian content in the radio here, and you have to kind of do that. Otherwise, everybody would just play the top 20 hits from New York City every day.
Well said. And hey, not just Canadian music, Canadian comedy. Without Canadian comedy, the world would be nowhere. There would be no Second City and Saturday Night Live and Wayne's World and Caddyshack, etc. So
yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, that goes without saying anything, that the strength of the Canadian. Well, I mean, John Candy should be on the $5 bill. That should, if not Terry Fox, then John Candy on the 10, maybe.
On the tenor. Well, you've been so generous with your time. Before I ask the closer, the mic cut out during one integral part of this interview, and that was what you said your nickname was during the Van Halen tour. What was that?
They called me Little Al. Actually, I wanted to expand on that story anyway. They called me Little Al because when Alex had the neck brace, he wouldn't do meet and greets. So I would go in as Little Al instead of Al for the meet and greets. And I also did interviews with Ed a lot, like just in Little Al. Ed would, and it was great because it got OLP press and we'd talk about the band and the record and stuff. So it was like, man, win-win for me. But yeah, Little Al, there's a picture I can send you. I can email you the photo of, I have a picture of one of the meet and greets.
That would be fantastic. And that's an amazing story. I can't imagine there was a Little Ed. So for there to be a Little Al is pretty prestigious.
Thank you very much. Yes.
So my last question, aside from all the Van Halen stuff, I look at you and say, again, this is a guy who's been successful in entertainment long-term, doing things his way. And a lot of people are going, should I enter a career in the performing arts or entertainment? Because the world is nuts. So I'm going to ask it and direct it to you. Jeremy, any last words for the kids?
Yeah, man. The only way you'll get anywhere in anything is hard work. I mean, it's if it's music, then it's getting good at your craft through the instrument. Just let that do the talking for you. If it's a podcast, just make sure the content that you're creating is as entertaining as, like, think about good conversations that you've had with people. Some of the best moments, like, try and picture what that is, because that's what a hit podcast is, content that people enjoy listening to. So whether that's something that they wouldn't have thought of saying, or whether there's someone can do a voice that they can't do that they appreciate, or they're learning something about something that they would not have known before, all of those things, just realize every, minute and a half, it has to be something that people will appreciate, and being yourself is first and foremost, because if yourself catches on, then you don't have to do anything to try and keep that going.
Couldn't top that myself. Thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to seeing what's next, and best of luck with the IF.
Very much.
Thanks, Jeremy. Have a great rest of the day.
Paltrocast.